So we'd like to welcome you today to our webinar called What is a Tick? So I'm Nancy Riegelsberger from Cornell Cooperative Extension out of Steuben County, and we thank you for joining us today. We know that ticks are kind of a nuisance and a big problem for a lot of folks. And so we are very pleased to and very grateful to our intern, who is Ashlee Zschoche, who is going to be our presenter today. And she's very knowledgeable about ticks, and I'm sure you're going to learn some great information. So we would ask that you save your questions for Ashlee until the end of her presentation. You can either unmute yourself or write something in the chat when she's done with her presentation, and that way we can address all the questions that you may have as she finishes up. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ashlee. I'll let her do her intro and give us her good information. So thank you, Ashlee.
Hello, my name is Ashlee Zschoche. I am the intern through CCE Steuben, and I am studying wildlife management at SUNY Cobleskill. So what is a tick? A lot of people know that they're like parasites, but they don't really associate them with like the arachnid class, which they actually are. They're related to stuff like spiders. So that was something that I found really cool. They can be as small as poppy seeds and as big as like apple seeds. So there's a range of sizes, all depending on what age they are. So as you can see, the life cycle of a tick, this time of year, it is hard to find ticks because they are more of the larval stage. So we'll have to wait and see like how big the population is actually going to be this year till they get a little bit older and they're easier to find. Ticks go through different life stages depending on their blood meals. So a tick will go through a blood meal to transfer from larvae to nymph, and then again from nymph to adult. So in New York State, there are 3 main species of ticks. There's 30 altogether, and 10 of them can actually carry diseases, stuff like Lyme disease, which most people know. These are all pictures that I took under a microscope of ones that I've caught this year. There is the black-legged tick, the American dogwood tick, and the Lone Star tick. You can see they all have like their own distinct features, and they're all adult females. So not only when you get ticks, you got to learn how to prevent them so you're not getting bit as often. So there's repellents that you can use. There's store-bought, and then just stuff like wearing light colors, checking yourself often, and showering after being outdoors will help reduce your chances of being bitten. When you're checking yourself for ticks, you want to look at places like behind your ears, neck, your waist, between your toes, like little places that they can get into and hide. And it's actually, those are the warmer spots of your body. So if you get a tick, there's many different ways to remove them. There's some old wise tales like using a match, but the safest ways are either using tweezers or some sort of tick key. When you use tweezers, you want to get as close to the head, which is going to be like partially in the skin as you can, and pull straight up. Don't squish the body, don't anything like that until it's out of your skin. You can also use like tick keys or tick tornadoes, and what there is there's the small areas, which is where they're going to end up, and you twist and it'll bring the head out too. So my job this summer was to test local parks and to see where they are at this moment in time, how many are around, different like life stages they're in, like how many actually survive the winter. because they have adapted to survive the winter. So I was working at 25 different parks here in Steuben County, and I traveled to each of those locations around 7 times, depending on weather, temperature, time of day, just to see what different variables will affect whether they're active or not. So this is a map of Steuben County and where I have tested. I tried to go as broad as possible just to make sure I kind of touched all bases of the county. So how I did it, I made a tick drag at the beginning of the summer, which is a piece of wood with a white or light colored piece of fabric hooked to it. And you drag it through woods or any area you want to. And when you check it every couple of feet, you can see the bright colored, like the orangish tint of the tick on there, if they're on there. I also was wearing light colors, so they're easier to see if they happen to get on me. Along with, I used some tape around my ankles, just so when I was walking through taller grass, the sheet wouldn't be able to get all the way down into the grass, but my legs that were walking through it would. So here in Steuben County this summer, I didn't have as much luck as I wanted to, but I found 4 in the nymph stage, which makes sense because that's the life stage they are in at the moment, along with 2 adults, which means they survived last winter. I found 5 black-legged ticks and 1 American dog tick in Steuben County. And I don't know who's familiar with the area of Steuben County, but I found 1 in Bradford, 2 in Hornell, 2 in Howard, and 1 in Bath. So I figure I didn't find very many because of temperatures or life stages. So for the temperatures, I have looked up the past 10 years of their temperatures, humidity, and pressure. It shows you the variable in how populations could easily fluctuate with the variables of all 3 of those weather permitting variables. So interesting facts I found this summer is this piece between in the top picture between the 2 is called the hypostome. That is actually like a harpoon, and that's the part that will actually enter your skin, and that's called the hypostome. Another fact that I found interesting was ticks can go up to 430 days without a blood meal. So it might not instantly change into like the next stage, but they can go quite a ways like dormant or that during the winter. Ticks cannot fly or jump. They are only crawling around. To transfer to you, they crawl to the top of like blades of grass and they will just quest is what it's calling. They'll quest onto you and then they'll crawl over your body to find the warm spot that they would like to inject the hypostome. And ticks feed for around 3 days and then they detach themselves and then they'll quest off of you and go on with their life. So sources I used for my presentation and all summer, I kept trying to constantly learn new information, was Cornell Cooperative Extension, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which is the CDC, and Steuben County Public Health. And that's all I have prepared for today. Does anyone have any questions for me?
So maybe you could talk a little bit about them being on an animal, like, you know, how that they're on a rabbit or a deer, and that's how they get infected. You want to kind of explain to people how they get infected?
So One thing that I was going to talk about is the way that ticks are infected. So not all ticks carry diseases like Lyme disease. It's their original host that will give them the disease. So when they are transforming from a lymph or a larvae to a nymph, they will either feed on a bird or a rat or something smaller. And that animal is actually what gives the tick Lyme disease. So when it goes on with its life and feeds on the next animal, that's what it's giving. It's more of a carrier than carrying or than being born with the like diseases. So I have a question in the chat and it says, how do you know a bite needs medical attention? If you get your bite and you get your tick out of the bite, I recommend freezing or having your tick in a Ziploc bag for a week after your bit, because if you realize that it's starting to become really itchy or swelling up or something just doesn't seem like right, then then you can take your tick and they can actually test it for diseases at the doctor's office. If that answers your question. Our next question is, do we actually have a serious tick problem in comparison to the country? So worldwide, there are around 850 species of ticks. And in New York alone, we only have about 30 species. So we do have a higher population of certain species, but compared to the rest of the country and worldwide, we don't have as many species to worry about. Do you know if cutting long grasses decreases the tick population? Yes. The shorter the grass is, or the more you keep it cut, the ticks won't want to stay there because their habitat just keeps changing. So they'll find somewhere like in the woods or along tree lines to stay because there's less change.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Hi, excellent presentation first. Even if you didn't find a lot of ticks, 25 parks, 7 times each is a lot of work. So kudos to you, that's amazing. So I had done some research. I don't overlap in your area, but I was in the upper Susquehanna River Basin.
Okay.
So I kind of went as far west as Ithaca.
Okay.
I did end up finding a lot of ticks. I just wanted to ask, I'm not an ecologist, but about the vegetation. Were a lot of these parks heavily wooded, or was it a lot of mowed, maintained grass?
So I kind of did a variation of different things. Each park, if they had a ball field, I went around there. If they had trees, I went in the woods or the tree lines. And then I also did open fields because my whole goal was to actually see which area they would be more likely to live in.
Okay.
So I found out that the open fields, they weren't very much in, but that's because of their habitat changing. And with parks, you have to kind of keep updated with mowing and everything.
Right, right.
So most of the ones I found were actually in the woods where the population could just grow and didn't have to worry about change.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think that the tick cycle is being more prevalent because of warmer climate change? I mean, is climate change making a difference?
So I had a question that is climate change a big part of the life cycle of a tick? And so the life cycle hasn't changed much in the past couple years. There's still a lot of nymphs throughout time, like in the spring. But trying to think of how to put it. The temperature, the warmer temperatures are more dominant for different species. So the Lone Star tick, for one, loves the warmer areas compared to the black-legged tick, which likes the cooler areas under the leaf litter in the trees. But okay. So I have another question, which is, was there a population of white-tailed deer in the parks you visited? So yes, a lot of the parks I visited did have or are known for deer population, but not all of them. So a lot of people associate deer ticks or white-tailed deer with ticks. They are just a carrier. It's one of the easier and more populated species that ticks can feed off of. And with this time of year, with deer season coming around, I feel like it's going to be a big tick season because of how many nymphs I was finding compared to adults. And did any of the ticks you capture have Lyme disease? So that is one thing I did not get to look into. It cost money, and then I couldn't find anyone to help link up to search for it. The local doctor's offices only wanted to test if someone was bitten by them. So that's something I would like to look to more in the future when I can find someone to kind of partner with.
I think it's interesting too, if you can talk about the size, like they were at the bagel, like your tiny little poppy seed thing, like how tiny they are.
So I did mention size.
Oh, you did, okay.
So what month are they most prevalent to attach to a host? If we go back. So ticks will go through a feeding to transfer to each life stage, each life stage. So a larvae will attach more or less in the winter to transfer it into a nymph in the spring. So they'll use if they're not hibernating under leaf litter, they'll use the warmth of different animals to house themselves for habitat. They'll crawl on them, if they're full engorged ticks, then they'll live on those animals. So they don't need a blood meal, but they'll stay warm. So if you look, there's winter is going to be the major times where they will attach to a host. I think that's all my questions.
So ask if there's any more.
So is there any more questions?
Okay.
Okay, so I would like to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon to learn a little bit more about ticks and their life cycle and what you do about them, if you have to remove them and where they host on your body. A super big thank you to Ashlee Zschoche, who we were so pleased to have her in our office this year doing this internship. And she did a super job presenting today. So thank you, Ashlee, very, very much. Just to let you know, we will be putting a recording of this presentation on our website, which is www.putknowledgetowork.org. So check it out down the road if you want to share this with other folks to just make sure that they understand what you need to do about ticks and how they are affecting our lives. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And always check out our website, putknowledgetowork.org, to find out more on information that we have and websites that or webinars that we're offering. So thank you, everybody.